Greetings everyone and welcome to the third video of the video series on coping with adversity and recovering from crisis. This time we will look at the concept of adversity and different ways to successfully manage and even thrive in it. We will begin by clearing out what we mean by adversity, just to make sure we don't confuse this concept with stress and everything we have covered so far. The second step will be to take a look into the areas where adversity usually strikes us. Take a look at the 3 golden rules of hardships and think about what good can adversity bring to our lives, well-being and performance. Finally, I will give you a couple of tips on how to manage adversity and even thrive in it. Throughout the video, we will also engage in 3 exercises that will hopefully put all your past, current and future adversities into a different, more empowering perspective. As usual, let's begin with the definition. I bet that you already know exactly what adversity is and what it means, especially if English is your mother language. But let's put it out there anyway in order to avoid mixing it up with other concepts that we have already talked about and those that will come up in the next videos. We can straightforward say that adversity equals some sort of hardship, which can be a difficult or unpleasant situation that happens one time or lasts for a longer period of time. It is very interconnected with stress, the main difference being that stress is the response we more often than not get when facing adversity. Basically, if we put it to the concepts we're already familiar with, adversity could be referred to as the demands that we experience in our everyday lives or have experienced in the past, those demands or situations being difficult for us for one or many different reasons. Traumatic events also represent adversity, and those often leave consequences even when the situation itself is over. Here are some examples of adversity that we can face in our lifetime. Bullying, poverty, abuse, war, pandemic, injury, chronic illness, death of a loved one, being a victim of violence, victim of racism, economic crisis, existential crisis, mental illness, illness or disability, parents' divorce, heartbreak, manipulation, etc. However, adversity can show up in less traumatic yet still difficult forms in our everyday lives. Let's say your boss is a tyrant, or your partner is manipulating you to do things you don't want, or you fight with your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend on a daily basis, or you struggle with losing those pounds. Maybe your coach is biased and is tougher on you than on your teammates. So adversity can come in all shapes and sizes. It might not be present there every day, but sooner or later we are bound to face it, and we want to be able to manage it when it's there in order to get the best of our lives despite of it. Let's start by taking a minute, or 3 minutes to be exact, to think about the adversities you're facing at this time of your life and write them down. Then think about the adversities that you have experienced in the past, even those which consequences are still present in your life now, and write them separately from the ones that are now present in your life. If you feel like you're not facing any adversity at the moment, simply write about those from the past. Describe them in such detail that someone who would have time for a quick read would understand at least to some extent what you're going through. Then take some time to answer the question on where do you currently experience adversity the most. Is it at home, with your family or partner? Maybe at work? Maybe in social situations? Think this through. And then think about where have you experienced adversity the most in your past. You can take a piece of paper or the downloadable worksheet and write your answers down. As I mentioned before, you have 3 minutes. Okay, time's up. So what did you write about? Problems at work, school, at home, arguments with your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, or someone else close to you? Maybe some traumatic event from your childhood, we all have those. Anxiety in social situations, like public speaking, we talked about that one last time, remember? Physical disability, back problems due to sedentary lifestyle, mental health issues. Those are quite common nowadays. They can basically be referred to as the new normal. Speaking of normal, money issues, maybe a chronic illness, obesity, sleep, overthinking, purpose or meaning of life. No matter what your hardships are, know that we all have them and that most of the time they're not fun. But on the bright side, most of the time they can be useful if we put our minds to it. But before we move on to that, I want you to take a look at which of the following clusters or fields do your most common hardships belong to. Are any of them physical? Maybe you have some type of physical disability or chronic illness, or you're simply out of shape. How many of them are mental? Constant worrying, social anxiety, procrastination, burnout, PTSD? What about emotional? How's your anger management? Do you have constantly present negative emotions due to some event that prevent you from leading a happy and fulfilled life? Would you describe yourself as emotionally stable? What about emotionally available? Are you good in forming deep, long-lasting relationships with others? Or are you usually afraid that you will get hurt? Speaking of which, how's your social group? Or social groups if you have more of them? Are you getting along well with the people you spend most of your time with? Not just friends, but also co-workers, colleagues, people from your CrossFit or dancing group, even those that you don't have things in common with. What about total strangers? How do you think that people you meet for the first time see you as? Kind, non-judgmental, well-behaved, open-minded? How do you get on with people you don't see eye to eye with? Can you still be friends or productive together as co-workers? What about the meaning of small everyday things that happen in your life? Do you feel any adversity when it comes to that? Do you find it difficult sometimes to live according to your values? Maybe often? Or maybe you're struggling to find a clear purpose of your life, something we psychologists call existential anxiety. What if we add choice and freedom to the purpose? Do you feel trapped? Like you've been doing things that others told you to do most of your life? That you don't have enough choice? Or do you feel like if you quit your 9-to-5 job that you despise, you won't be able to provide for your family? Or maybe you're loaded but you have no idea what to invest in or are constantly afraid of losing your wealth? Have you experienced poverty at any time in your life so far? There truly are so many different categories that we can pick to attribute our hardships to. Which one prevails the most in your case? Of course, more often than not, it happens that the adversity represents a mix of clusters, or even better put, one drags the other with it. For example, the adversity with COVID-19 began with social restrictions and freedom restrictions from the existential cluster. Freedom restrictions could have led to mental issues, and in this case even emotional, if due to the lockdown you engaged in arguments filled with negative emotions with your lockdown roommates on a daily basis. Social restrictions, on the other hand, led to several people losing their jobs, hence the financial cluster that engaged the spiritual of how to find a way out of this without compromising your values. Therefore, during the world pandemic, you could have experienced any adversity type or even all of them together. As you can see, these things operate without many rules. It can all hit you at once or every now and then. It can be present for a short time or for years to an end. Despite that these things often happen without our control, I would like to mention now the things that do apply for all of us when it comes to adversity. The 3 golden rules of adversity. One is bad, one is semi-good, and the third one is good. Let's start with the bad one to get it over with. The first one is that there are no limits to the amount of adversity that can hit us at a time. That not only refers to each category, for example, anxiety, anger, depression, overthinking, and helplessness in the mental adversity type cluster, but also across the different adversity types. Meaning that you could be facing all 7 adversity types at the same time, 4 from each category, for example. It's what we mentioned previously in the terms of the world pandemic. Now, this is not as bad as it sounds, because you have been doing this since you were born. We're basically born to be experts in managing adversities, but sometimes we forget, especially when it comes to the how. No worries, because that's what these video series are for. Second golden rule of adversity is that there can never be less than one present in our lives. Now, I know what you're thinking, and yes, it sucks that we can't get a break from it. Even when you find yourself in a nice, peaceful, and happy period of your life, there's this little reminder in your head that it probably won't last forever. It would be so cool if we could just get rid of all the waves of adversity, of all the unpleasant situations that we were, or that we are in now, or that still await us. But if we go back to controlling the controllables, our aim should not be to get rid of the waves, but to learn how to surf them. Adversity is part of life, and trying to change that can sometimes only bring more adversity to our lives. Our goal is to accept it and to see how to, once again, as we have said with stress, manage it to our convenience. Which leads us to the third rule, which is that every single adversity you face is an opportunity for personal upgrade. I'm going to say that again. Every single adversity you face is an opportunity for a personal upgrade, to level up. And that's the very reason why we need it. Think about one of the adversities you're facing at the moment and ask yourselves, what good can come of this? Where in this whole mess lies my chance for making myself better than the day before? Is it to see the opportunity that you've been ignoring? To finally put yourself together and get back in shape, physically or mentally? To judge a certain type of situation from a different perspective from now on? Or to stop judging other people around you? Maybe the adversity you're facing is a wake-up call for you to realize your inner strength in handling these types of challenges. To make the first step to overcoming an obstacle in a relationship with a person that's very dear to you. Or to finally get out of that comfort zone. Do you think it's possible to turn the worst thing that has happened in your life into something that would heal all the wounds from the past and bring value to the world at the same time? These are some very big questions that are worth every single minute of the time we spend on them. You'll realize why in the next activity. I would like you to think about 7 things you're most proud about yourself and write them down. Then I would ask you to give some serious thought on how did all the adversities you have experienced so far in your life contributed to the strengths and qualities. You can help your thinking process by looking at the list of past adversities from the previous exercise. Once again, you have 3 minutes. If you need more time, you know the drill. It's okay if you do, because it's often very difficult to think about 7 things you're proud of, while, on the other hand, if I asked you to tell me about 7 things you're not proud of, you would probably need how many seconds? You can press pause and try it out actually, just for fun. I bet it would take you a lot less time than for the things you feel proud of, as that's how the human mind works. We are more inclined to focus on the negative, as that is supposed to increase our chances of survival, which in reality is not always true. I hope that with this exercise you managed to see how difficult times had their share in everything you are as a personality today, and that many of your positive traits have developed thanks to the adversities you went through in life. And now let's move on to the final point and see how we can turn adversity into opportunity instead of anything else that would lead us downhill for future reference. 5 tips. First would be to sit yourself down in times of adversity and give some thought on your past experiences in difficult situations, what you have learned from them, how have they positively contributed to your personality, and what you can use from that experience to help you manage the difficult situation you're in now. The exercise My Superhero Powers and Their Source is one way of doing that. The second would be to try and find the opportunity that lies behind the difficult situation. Remember the 3rd golden rule. There always is one, you just have to find it. If you do, invest your focus in it. If you manage to focus on the opportunity, you will help yourself to march on despite the hardships you're facing at the moment. However, if you don't find the opportunity right away, don't worry about it, because sometimes the opportunity needs to find you. It's a complicated world that we live in, and sometimes things just don't go the way we want them to. So what to do then? Invest some time in yourself, in building your mindset and doing the things you enjoy, even if it's only a couple of minutes per day. We already mentioned and tried out some useful mental techniques in the previous videos, and we will try out more of them in the next video on building our mental resilience. So while you work out your brain muscles, don't forget to work out your physical muscles as well, as exercise is one of the best antidepressants you have at your disposal. And as I've mentioned, doing things that you enjoy, most of all, spend time with people that lift your mood and doing things that make you laugh. Speaking about laughter and humor, I would like to encourage you to do one final short exercise before we finish up with the recap. As much as there are some very difficult adversities that we faced in our lives that can never be looked at from this perspective, there are also those that felt like the worst thing at a time, but are now the subject of laughter when you tell the story to your friends or colleagues. It takes sometimes great courage to find humor in difficult things, but it is, believe it or not, one of the main foundations of mental resilience, which awaits us in video number 4. I would encourage you to do this exercise straight after this video, as I will go straight to the recap now. To summarize the content of this video, we started off by clearing out that adversity represents the difficult situations we encounter in our lives that are often accompanied by a certain amount of stress. We know now that it does not have to always refer to a traumatic event. However, when we talk about adversity, we usually do refer to a hardship that is tough to handle and deteriorates our well-being and performance. We took a look into some examples of adversity, did our first exercise on defining our own past and present adversities, and saw that we can describe them with the help of 7 different types of adversity: mental, physical, emotional, social, spiritual, existential, and financial. We mentioned that we usually experience more types of adversity at the same time, that they can be intertwined among each other, and also that they can last for an uncertain amount of time. However, a common ground exists when we talk about hardships, and those are the 3 golden rules of adversity, referring to the unlimited amount of hardships we can face, the fact that we can be assured to face at least one adversity in our lifetime, and the fact that we have the power to convert every adversity we face, no matter how bad, into some kind of an opportunity to level up our lives or lives of others. That led us to engage a bit into seeing the potential opportunities with our current hardships, to take some time to think on how past adversities contributed to our personality, and to finalize this video with 5 tips to successfully manage and thrive in adversity: reflection, focusing on opportunities, mental training, physical training, and finding humor. Speaking of which, remember you have one more exercise to engage in after this video. I will be looking forward to having you in the next video. Thank you and see you soon.